and welcome to the second part of this video that I sit with Mike Israetel, and we are speaking about nutrition questions, specifically about applications and fundamentals of the hedonic staircase of dieting, the importance of maintenance phases either for fat loss or muscle gain, why it is important to keep relatively consistent meal numbers and meal structure every day for health, and much more. So stay tuned until the end, and I thank you so much for being here and watching this video with me, and I hope you like it. Put some likes, subscribe, hit the bell button, and give me some likes and some hearts in there. And if you have any questions, put them down here. I see you on the other side. It really comes down to what works for you and how better you can adhere to it.
It's very interesting to know a little bit more, coming from your words today, about the applications and fundamentals of the hedonic stir of dieting. What does that mean, and how do you utilize it?
So the hedonic staircase is a concept I guess I came up with, but it draws on the work of a ton of other people. Stefan Guyenet being one of the primary sources. He's on Joe Rogan, by the way. He was really good. And the hedonic staircase is as follows. At the top of the staircase, conceptual staircase, not a real staircase, you have foods that are unbelievably hedonic in nature. They're incredibly pleasurable. And they are amazing to eat if you have to eat a certain amount of food and you don't want to. So if you're trying to gain mass and you're just not a big eater, and you're like, oh my God, how am I supposed to eat 4,000 calories a day? I can't even look at a grain of brown rice without trying to throw up. You have to eat foods at the very top of that staircase that are incredibly, highly palatable and give you a ton of pleasure. So all of a sudden, if someone's like, hey, I know you don't want to look at brown rice anymore, but I got you this chicken and white rice, Thai dish with Thai spices in it. The macros are awesome, but it's so good. Try it. And they try it. They're like, oh my God, I could eat a ton of this. Every bite is just like singing and dancing in my mouth. That's awesome. Now, you would think that is the right answer for every situation. Of course, your food should taste good all the time. Sure. However, if you are eating to just maintain and you have an average hunger level, if you really put it into a ton of hedonic foods, it's easy to overeat those because every bite is pleasurable. You just want to keep taking more bites, which is probably explains something like 70% or more of the variance of why Western countries have obesity epidemics. Because free market capitalism is really good at giving people what they demand. And people demand super tasty foods that are really cheap. And if you go to the store in Australia, for example, it's almost exclusively what is sold is super tasty foods that are really cheap. That's what we want. High hedonic foods are the norm. Can you imagine a food on the shelf that advertises low hedonic status? Like a breakfast cereal? Like, no, not as good. You're like, what? That's crazy. I want it to be as great as possible. But great things are really easy to overconsume. So that's lower, walking down the hedonic staircase. In the middle of it are foods that are like pretty decent tasting, but you're probably not going to overeat. Like think about a meal of brown rice, salmon, and some orange slices, an avocado, and a bunch of broccoli. Like that's a good meal, right? But you're not exactly like, oh my God, Tasha, you know what I'm craving? Broccoli with orange slices. Nobody really says that. If you're like, if you're super drunk after a night out, you're not like, oh my God, I'd kill for some brown rice and salmon. Nobody says that. They all go to the super hedonic foods, right? But that kind of meal is going to allow you to feel some happiness from food, which is pretty important for most people, especially culturally and probably just biologically. If you have no happiness coming from food, a lot of times it sort of just disrupts your normal way of life. So what you end up doing is most foods for most people most times should be in that middle range of hedonic yield, where they're just like, really pretty good, but nothing, it's just not too addictive, nothing you're going to go crazy on, not like potato chips or something. At the bottom end of the hedonic staircase is where your boy is currently living right now, because I'm deep. I'm just week 17 of a fat loss diet. I can see lines in my glutes. It's really weird. You guys can tell I have alien face where there's all this, what the hell is that? Who knows? So I am completely food obsessed. My body is radically trying to get me to eat as much as possible. If I ate even normal foods, the hedonic yield would be so high, it would cause this sort of positive feedback loop where I want to eat more of them. Right? So like if I eat oranges right now, they're so good that I want more oranges. And I don't get less hungry after meals. I get more hungry. So I have to play the low end of the hedonic food staircase, intentionally eating foods that just aren't that good. It requires plenty of willpower to do, but it makes things net balance much easier for willpower, because when you eat foods that are not super tasty, you finish them and you're like, okay. And someone's like, do you want more food now? And you're like, I'm good. Because physiologically your hunger has been squashed, but there's really just no cravings that come along with that. So on the low end is 4 times at the end of fat loss phases that are really extreme, or for people that have a real hard time trying to control their intake. Or if you just finished a fat loss diet and you're trying to eat at maintenance again, for a while, eating lower hedonic staircase foods is a really, really, really good idea, because you fill up, you don't overeat, and then slowly you reintroduce foods higher and higher on the hedonic staircase. After an extreme fat loss diet, for example, just more brown rice and chicken just make you super happy. You eat that for a couple of weeks, and then you go out with your friends and you have some frozen yogurt or some Thai chicken, something in the middle of that. And then you have some salmon and orange slices and avocado or whatever, and you're good to go. You're not really getting any fatter. And then towards the end, once you're pretty much metabolically back to normal, psychologically back to normal, then you start pizza and cheeseburgers again. And, you don't have that like wide-eyed when you're eating a cheeseburger, you're breathing it in at the same time kind of thing, because that can lead to overeating and just sadness. Then you're normal, recovered psychologically, and you can have just normal food, and you're good to go. So choosing where you eat on the hedonic staircase is a matter of making sure that you know how much food you have to take in. Where are you going to get that decent middle grade food happiness? Too much food happiness causes overeating. Not enough food happiness causes undereating. Just the right amount causes the perfect amount of eating, so you can make your diet easier by knowing what your cravings are like, how hungry you are, and choosing foods that reflect that level. The hungrier and the more cravey you get, the lower hedonic foods you should be eating. And the more you're having trouble eating, a lot of bodybuilders gaining mass try to gain it on broccoli and brown rice and bland chicken. Stupidest shit I've ever heard, because you're just going to make your life miserable for no reason. You could be flavoring your foods, spicing up your foods, having some cheat meals now and again. You make amazing gains, and you'll have no downsides, but your life will be happier. And honestly, and this is an interesting point, if you're happier more often than not and you're enjoying your food, your overall stress hormone level is lower, and you actually make better anabolic gains. So it's every single advantage for someone to try this hedonic pyramid or hedonic staircase idea.
Okay. Would you apply the same as hedonic staircase for someone who probably is not necessarily trying to gain or lose, but it's more like dealing with big cravings, and you sort of struggle with those to maybe you're very weak at managing the cravings at night, or you like eating sweets every day? Do you think it is applicable to use it in that case, or would you have another approach?
There's many approaches, and it's very situationally dependent. But using that concept can absolutely be a really good thing. So you can tell yourself, like, okay, if I have Cheetos at my house, I know I'm just going to eat that shit. I'm going to eat the whole bag. Every time I have it, I eat the whole bag. In a magic world where I had infinite willpower, I wouldn't. But I'm a real person. Let's just start. I like to apply this thing for especially regular people trying diets or just trying to eat better. Start at the real world, and then later we can make you a superhero. Real world, I eat Cheetos when they're in front of me and I finish the whole bag. So how about this? Don't buy Cheetos when you go to the store. Buy some healthier snacks, quote unquote. Cheetos are not unhealthy when eaten in moderation, but snacks that basically just don't taste as good. So when you get snacky at night, you're like, ooh, I've got some peanut butter and some celery sticks and some crackers. Okay, you sit down, you eat them. They're tasty. There's only so much of that shit you can eat. And after a while, you've eaten 500 calories of that, and you're like, oh, that was really good. But I'm done. Someone's like, are you sure you don't want another celery stick? You're like, yeah, no, I'm very sure I don't want another celery stick. And they're like, peanut butter? You're like, I'm fine, honestly. Get away from me. So 500 calories later, you're good to go and you're done. On the other hand, if you had Cheetos around and you know yourself, you would have been 1,500 calories into the third bag and being like, what the hell am I even doing with my life? That doesn't mean there's not a time and a place for eating 1,500 calories of Cheetos. There absolutely is. You live life in the balance. You have your fun times and you have your times where you're a little bit more of an adult about food, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you know you're the kind of person that you need to maintain your weight for a little bit and you struggle with eating too much junk and tasty foods and candy, maybe sort of steer yourself away from that, steer yourself to slightly low hedonic foods, and you just kind of have the best of both worlds. And a lot of times you're even good with other people eating the stuff around you. It's just not for you to eat. Like you go to the gas station or your friends on a road trip, or what do you guys call it, the petrol station, and they buy candy bars, you buy protein bars, and protein bars taste really good to you and you love them and they're part of your fitness journey, and they're like, ooh, why don't you have a candy bar? And you're like, like it'll give me a little bit more fun in my mouth, but then how much will it, I just go crazy and I want more. And some people are abstainers, and some people are more marginal in their eating, where some people can have half a candy bar and then they feel totally great. And if you're one of those people, rock on. But some people aren't like that, and if they have half a candy bar, they want another 1.5 candy bars. If you know yourself well enough, it's totally fine to control your eating from the top down by just planning ahead of time. That's it.
Planning is very important, especially if you have to go out or something like that. It's just, I think it's part of the winning side. When you plan your meals, you know yourself very much and know what the triggers are and how can you respond to them in a more strategic way.
Totally. And another thing is about like long-term stuff versus short-term stuff. And this isn't for everyone, but I think for most people, if you go out and let's say you go out with your girlfriends, like on a big girlfriend party night every 3 weeks, and like the other 99 meals you have in those 3 weeks, you're living a fitness lifestyle full stop and you're eating exclusively good foods. Does that mean you can't have like 10 slices of pizza dipped in ranch dressing when you go out with your friends and you're drunk? No, of course not. That's a beautiful part of life. So I think there's absolutely times, if they're, every now and again, we just eat like just total nonsense, dumb shit. Like in Australia, the burger joint situation is completely out of control. If there's all kinds of different gourmet burgers and crazy fries and dipping sauces, why wouldn't you have that every now and again? The thing is, like, if you're having that once a day, twice a day, and you can't stop, and your body weight's ballooning out of control and it's causing you health problems, then you're in a situation where you need to sort of clamp down a little bit. I think a lot of people have that all or nothing mentality where they're like, my friends are going out, I'm going out with them, I'm only going to have diet drinks, and I'm going to bring my own Tupperware. Like, are you dieting for a show? No. Well, then go out and eat it up. And, there's downsides to that. You're going to wake up the next day feeling a little bit bloated. You're going to have bags under your eyes. You're going to be salted up. You're going to be in a bad mood. You're going to look like shit. You're going to like shit relatively. And then you're going to weigh in and you're going to be heavier and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to die. But the thing is, like, just shut up and go work out. Go to the gym because you're going to go anyway. It's not just you're making up for last night. You're supposed to go anyway. You go work out. You sweat out a bunch of the salt in the water. You feel amazing. You have your first couple of clean meals. They're super tasty. The next day, your body doesn't remember that you had a ton of those calories because you're back to square one. You're normal. Healthy adaptive metabolisms don't get super fat from one meal. It just doesn't happen. There's nobody that is enormously fat that it's like, it all started with that one cheese pizza I ate. It's just all downhill from there. It takes consistent effort to get enormous. So it's okay to have some really awful food completely guilt-free every now and again. That's totally fine.
Yeah, like no one ever got fat for eating one donut, or someone got skinny for eating one salad.
Nobody got fat from eating 10 donuts either. You got to eat that shit for years, 10 donuts a day on top of normal food. If you really want to know what it takes to become fat, I don't know if you guys have the show. I think, Cole, you guys have Hulu and stuff. You should have all these shows. My 600-Pound Life, I don't know if you've seen it before. It's a show about people who are excessively obese. They're dieting down to be candidates for bariatric surgeries. They actually have to try to get below 500 or 600 pounds to be candidates for bariatric surgery. They do an in-depth dive on what kind of diets these people eat. It is essentially exclusively junk food ad nauseum. I mean, an unbelievable amount of junk food. Nobody watching this feed right now, chances are, could even maintain that kind of diet. You think it's fun to eat 8,000 calories a day of just pizza and potato chips and soda. Try that shit for 3 days. You're going to feel terrible. All that stuff is going to look awful. You're going to feel physically ill. And you're going to be like, I have no idea how they do it. It takes work. You don't simply just balloon up like that. So if you eat mostly healthy foods, mostly middle end of that hedonic staircase, and you regularly get lots of physical activity and exercise, you have nothing to worry about eating some junk every now and again. Absolutely nothing at all.
Now, I've got another question, and this is about the importance of maintenance phases, either for fat loss or muscle gain. Why are they important?
Because fundamentally, both muscle gain and fat loss are disruptive. They are not homeostatic. Your body needs and your mind needs to recover from them after they're executed for a certain amount of time. The amount of training volume it takes to be productively in a hypercaloric muscle gain phase is unsustainable. At some point, you need to go to maintenance volumes to let your body recover and relax. If you're eating hypercalorically during maintenance, you're just adding body fat because there's no stimulus for muscle gain anymore. That's why a muscle gain maintenance phase is needed. For fat loss, you get diet fatigue. At some point, you get so lean and so much leaner than you were, your diet fatigue is really crazy. You've dieted for too long. You need to maintain in order to reduce level of diet fatigue so that you can diet again or just become a normal person. So that's why maintenance phases are important, because just like weekends are important because you can't work all the time, maintenance phases are important because all the other phases, fat loss, muscle gain, throw your body temporarily out of balance and out of the state of recovery and homeostasis.
Do you think they are also important just because they also teaches you how to maintain what you have achieved? So would you feel like maintenance phases are really good for practicing the new habits, how to get used to this new sort of body weight? Do you think that's also useful for that?
I think maintenance phases prepare you for the next phase in our sort of Renaissance periodization phasic structure, or called the balance phase. And that's an open-ended phase that may last the rest of your life. So let's say you weigh like 70 kilos and you want to weigh 60. You do a fat loss phase to get to 65, then you do a maintenance phase to recover the diet fatigue. Then you do a fat loss phase to get to 60, and then you do a maintenance phase to recover the diet fatigue. And like you said, begin to learn how to eat a little bit more normally, sustainably. After you finish that maintenance phase, you get into a phase called balance, where you do what I was just talking about, have some junk food with your friends every now and again, but mostly just eat pretty well and get lots of regular exercise. Maybe check in your body weight every now and again if you want, maybe not, just feeling how your clothes fit, how your energy is. And all of a sudden, you just keep going. And you're in this awesome balanced state of lots of physical activity, lots of healthy food, and occasional junk. And then you're good to go. And like you said, if you only ever do fat loss phases or gain phases, especially only if you ever try fat loss phases, you still don't know how to eat to maintain. A lot of people, and this is a really big problem with the diet industry, I hate to blame the diet industries. The diet industry is really just a reflection of what people demand. It's a supply and demand industry. Most people want these quick fix diets that they eliminate one food and this magic stupid bullshit fix, and then they go, okay, I'm doing keto. And someone's like, okay, what happens when you lose all the weight you need? They're like, well, I'll be lean. I'm like, okay. And then you want to stay lean, right? And they're like, yeah. Like, so you're just going to do keto forever? Like, well, yeah. Like, you're never going to have carbs again? Are you out of your mind? Like, why are you even on this earth? Sushi, gone. Pasta, gone. Bread, gone. Protein bars, gone. Ice cream, gone. You're kidding. Like, okay. So maybe I didn't think it through. Okay, so maybe you should do a maintenance phase. After you do your keto diet, you slowly introduce healthy carbs that aren't super high on the hedonic staircase, brown rice, some veggies, more fruit. And then all of a sudden you're learning how to live with a basically good diet that's no longer keto and you haven't regained the weight, so on and so forth. And voila, you're in a state where maintenance really helped you learn how to eat normally. You haven't gained back any fat, and then you can live in a state of balance. But the problem is most people don't do that, right? They do a keto diet or they do the whatever diet, and after they're done with the whatever diet, they just assume they just go back to normal. And normal is what made you fat to begin with, and it will make you fat again. And it will make you even fatter much because you really just slingshot yourself into a situation where you like got really, really hungry, got really, really lean, and now your body's really ready to eat super tasty foods again and eat them in excess. You know, and people say like, what do you want right after a diet? They're like pizza, burgers. Be like, okay, that's, you know, hundreds of millions of years of evolution pre-programmed to tell you to regain your body weight because it thinks you're starving. If you follow that process, you will regain your body weight. But most people who lose weight or lose fat, all of them maybe, vast majority, don't just want to regain it. So maintenance phase is a really good idea to teach you how to eat again normally, ease you back in up that hedonic staircase so that you have all of your results, you know how to keep them, and then you're on easy street from there.
Awesome. Do you think why it is important to keep relatively consistent meal numbers and the structure and size of the meals every day for health or even an adequate nutrition when you look at for the long term?
Yeah. So for some of those, it's not important at all. You can have a variable meal number and accomplish almost everything you want. The thing is twofold. First, humans are habitual creatures, and they just do better when they do roughly the same thing day to day. Like, if you have to reassemble your diet from scratch every day is a new day, you just IFYM everything. For most people, they'll be like, Cheetos and cheeseburgers it is, right? They fall back onto shitty habits or just lack of a habit. So it's good to have a structure to your eating so you kind of know what you're doing. It also helps you plan your energy levels. You know, you don't want to be at work and your boss is like, Johnson, this is important, take notes. And you're like, uh-huh. And you're like, oh yeah, I forgot to eat breakfast and lunch. You know, if you have a breakfast and lunch that you normally eat that are intellectually stimulatory, then you're going to be really good at your job, and then you're going to be really good at training. So it's good because some kind of plan for your daily diet just gives you a structure which fits better to your life. And because humans are creatures of habit, once it's habitual, you're just really good at it. And secondly, to reflect that point, the research is very clear. Folks that have diets that are relatively constant in nature are able to achieve fitness goals better and are able to maintain fitness goals better. People that have wildly drastic intakes tend to be people that don't accomplish things in fitness and or can't hold on to their accomplishments. So it's really good to have at least some kind of plan. Like I wake up and I do this and that, and then I have a decent breakfast of healthy foods. And sort of another point there that goes into that, if you know, healthy foods and foods that give you lots of energy and foods in that middle range of the hedonic staircase, they're not foods you randomly find. They require a little pre-planning. So if you have a plan, it's easy to pre-plan, right? If you don't have a plan, you're just going to fall back on whatever's around. And a lot of times whatever's around is just BS, right? So if you know you have a lunch every 12 p.m. and at work, and you bring your lunch and you pack it with healthy stuff, because that's just what you do when you pre-plan. It's easy to say, well, I'm planning anyway, I might as well eat healthy. Then you just eat healthy all the time. But if you don't plan a lunch, what ends up happening is you show up to the office and you work, and you get super hungry and you're like, shit, I didn't plan a lunch. And then you look in one of the meeting rooms and they're like, hey, we've got tons of pizza left over from the 11 a.m. meeting. Do you want some? And you're like, yeah, I don't have lunch. So you end up eating your 4 or 5 slices of pizza, and you get 2 great combinations of feeling like shit, and you're hypercaloric, and at some point, if you keep doing that, you're gonna sort of, get a little fatter. So that's the situation, and that's why some kind of pre-planned meal schedule for many people works better than just free-balling the meals. If you want to free-ball your meals, go to it. If that's what works best for you, great. Just make sure you're not kidding yourself.
I have a follow-up question about that, because generally in my practice, when I see patients that actually struggle to have an appetite and eat, sometimes they're probably not necessarily fitness enthusiasts or anything like that, but generally you try to sort of push them to a more regular eating pattern, just because they have to sort of get their body to miss or create that habit of having certain amount of food every now and then. And once the body get used to it, you start of having more appetite the more you have it. So I think this is important as well in that sense, or even for people that have actual conditions like IBS or irritable bowel disease, that they need a regular eating pattern to reduce any sort of symptoms or discomfort, any gas, or even for diabetics. When we think about diabetics, they need to have a more regular eating pattern, especially with some carbohydrates in each meal.
That's because they shoot insulin regularly, or they have an insulin pump, or they shoot Lantus or something like that, which is long acting, 100%. And especially for the people that have a poor appetite and are trying to gain a little bit of weight, those people really benefit from a regular meal schedule, and here's why. It's like a training schedule. Your body doesn't really want to train. Your training schedule reminds you, hey, it's Tuesday, shut up, go do legs. Okay, sweet. If you have a really poor appetite, the default isn't you eat. The default is that you don't eat. I know people that will, are computer programmers, that will code for 16 hours, and they'll be like, oh shit, I haven't eaten anything. And these people weigh 50 kilos for a reason. And their doctor's you could gain some weight because you're not very healthy. And they're weak. They have trouble opening their car door. And, when there's ice on it or something, and it's I don't feel like a grown man. So for them, reminding to eat is like a mass gaining bodybuilder who weighs, 125 kilos for him to go to 130 kilos. If you don't have pre-timed meals and you just rely on your body's intuition, your body will intuitively tell you not to eat, and then you'll be under eating all the time. So plans are really, really good for that.
Yeah, absolutely agree. In the case of someone that isn't maintenance, and they sort of struggle to find something to keep showing up in the gym, to coming up with a new goal, what would be the conversation you have with this person?
I would try to figure out what they liked most about the gym and what their long-term goals were, and find a tie-in between those two. If the long-term goals are to get really lean and stay really lean, I'd like to figure out what kind of really high throughput, high energy demanding activities that they would do that were fun and that they wanted to do, and we would try to explore those. That's it. So for most people, they like to be in the gym anyway, or most of us in the fitness industry, and their long-term goals align with that as well. But sometimes people are in the gym, but their long-term goals don't align with it. Like someone's been doing some powerlifting, but all they really want to do is be lean and muscular and super sexy, and they're having trouble getting motivated for powerlifting. Well, there's nothing wrong with that training, but it doesn't align with long-term goals. If you have a conversation with a client and say, okay, so what are your long-term goals? Like, I just want to be jacked and lean. Like, okay, how about we do hypertrophy training? Because that'll just make you jacked and lean. They're like, oh my God, that's great. That sounds great. And all of a sudden they're super passionate about it. Whereas on the other hand, if someone's training for hypertrophy training, but they really lost passion for that, and you're like, what is your long-term goal? They're like, I don't know about long-term, but in the short, like medium term, I just want to get strong. Well, then all of a sudden powerlifting training is a really, really good idea because it aligns with that. And if a person, doesn't have a physical activity that they like and that aligns with the long-term goal, it's time for them to explore some different physical activities they haven't done before. Join a CrossFit class, do a Zumba class, try some bodybuilding training, do this, do that, try play a team sport. And there's, for almost everyone, some kind of physical activity that they're really going to love that aligns with the long-term goals. It can be as ridiculous as playing VR shooter games or going to paintball leagues or something like that, or playing laser tag. That shit is fun as hell. Oh my God, you burn like 1,000 calories an hour running around shooting your friends. And if it's something you do 4 or 5 times a week, you get good at it. It's passionate. It's where all your friends are, and it keeps you lean and healthy. It's super awesome. It doesn't have to be going to the gym around pieces of shit like me that pull out their glutes in the middle of the training and take pictures, because nobody really wants to be around that, myself included.
Awesome. Mike, I really appreciate you coming to this show, and I'm so excited that I could have you in.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Thank you so much, Astrid, for having me on. It's a real pleasure. And YouTube, Renaissance Periodization YouTube, is where we're posting 3 or 4 videos a week of new content. Some of it's fun. Most of it is super informative. We're just getting out a ton of knowledge to you guys. And look, click on the ads, buy toothpaste or whatever the hell, because I'm trying to get rich off YouTube, goddammit. We don't, you know what I'm saying? We don't do this for our health. But on a serious note, come see us on YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment, all that shit.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mike, and I will hope to see you soon.
Awesome. Take care. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions or any comments, please comment below, and I'll be sure I'll answer to this as soon as I can.
That level. The hungrier and the more cravey you get, the lower hedonic foods you should be eating, and the more you're having trouble eating. A lot of bodybuilders gaining mass try to gain it on broccoli and brown rice and bland chicken. Stupidest shit I've ever heard, because you're just going to make your life miserable for no reason. You could be flavoring your foods, spicing up your foods, having some cheat meals now and again. You make amazing gains, and you'll have no downsides, but your life will be happier.